Hello and welcome. In my last video I showed an encoded multi-item sorter. This video I'm going to go through a step-by-step block tutorial because there's a few comments on the last video asking for it. So the first thing we're going to do to build this is we're just going to come around what's going to be a backside with some hoppers. We're going to hold shift so that we can place the hoppers onto the chests. Starting from the top, going down. And this approach, I'm going to make it so that the observers just come straight off the top. It saves a little bit of resources. But if you don't want to be able to see the bottom of observers just above your chests, all you need to do is either put some slabs so that you're going to see half of these chests, or just do another line of hoppers facing above them. That's it. Now that we've got the hoppers on the back of these chests, we're just going to put some chests above them, double chests. As I said before, if you want to be able to see less redstone, you just do this one up higher. And this is going to be our center line. So this is our center line here. And just to make our lives a little bit easier, just to keep track of what we're doing, I'm just going to put some temporary blocks here. And this is just going to represent where it just would have been if it was on that side. It's just a way of being able to keep track. Now this first line is going to be our overflow, which is why it doesn't have the chests above it. This second line is going to be for large items, and then we're going to sort going this way and then back this way. Okay, so once we have our buffer chests and our final line sitting here and our temporary blocks, we're just going to start building our clocks. Now I'm going to start by just coming out here with some temporary blocks. So this is simply so that it just makes it easier to remember where the clock comes out. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This last one's going to remain a block, and it just makes it a little bit easier for me to remember where my clock goes. We can do this for each of these, so I'll just get an observer. We're going to be coming over and up, and then this one's going to be coming down and over, and finally over and over. So this way, down that way, that way, that way. And that's each of our clocks. So we're just going to do our temporary blocks again for each of our clocks lines, which will be just one apart from each other. They're just before the chester goes into. So offset over here, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're only going to have 2 clocks on this side because the last one feeds into the overflow. And this is just going to help us get our clocks in the right position. So over, over, up, down, down, oh, didn't mean to break that, in, and then the last 2 face away, and just quickly over here as well. So it doesn't really matter what order you build these observers in, just so long as they're facing as shown here. Okay, so that's the observer parts of our clock. Now before we put the note block parts in and start creating a cycle, I'm just going to get some pumpkins, some lanterns. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's a light block. They're very useful when you're putting torches on it. It just reduces light just a little bit. So we just put that on top of each of these observers that are just facing over here. Then we can get some torches and put them on top of the lanterns. Once we've done that, we can now get our note blocks. And that's our clocks. And basically this lantern is holding that note block in a certain position, so that it doesn't run continuously, because if I took that torch away, you can see that it turns into a clock. Okay, so while we've done that, we can now put our comparators on top of these, and then we can start doing some dropper towers. But I'm not going to do that because I want to do what's in the center line first. So I just needed to get the clocks there so that I wasn't trying to work around everything else I'm building while I'm doing the observers. It's just easier to build them while everything else is out of the way. So let's start working on what's happening in the center line. For that we need some droppers. Now for the first one, this is our oversized item, so the dropper sort of goes away, but for the rest of them, the dropper sort of goes, how to put this, near. So this is a dropper for that clock, and it's away because it's large items, but this is going to be a dropper for this clock, so it's going to be near. So you just got this sort of an alternating pattern. Normally it's just this first one sits over one. And just to make it easier for the comparator, we're just going to put a block there that represents if the dropper had been here. Pretty straightforward. After we do that, we can get some hoppers and put them on top of each of these. And finally, we're going to get our hoppers, and we're just going to feed it into these blocks. So remember, we're alternating. So on this side it's a little bit easier. It's into that one, and if we come back here we can sort of see it alternate, so left, right, left, right, left, right. And then we're going to put comparators facing away, holding shift to place it on top of the hoppers. Just reading what's in these these droppers. And finally we're going to just put an item into each of these droppers. Okay, from there we can now see that all these comparators are on, so they're all acting as the sort of the NOT gates. So for this one with the oversized line, we're just going to have a second block here and run some dust over the top and some blocks over the top to protect that. But for the other ones, we're actually going to just put observers facing into the hoppers like that. So you might end up wanting to do some temporary blocks to do this better. So facing down into there, and then I just need one more for this one. So for most of the lines, it's an observer facing down into the hopper. It's just for the oversized filter, we're just going to have a block and a second hopper facing down. And these blocks are just to cut off any redstone that we might do up here, which we are doing. And then finally, we need to actually have something feed into these blocks, so we can just use a slab for that. So I'm just going to do a slab here, and I'm just going to take advantage of temporary block nature there, here, then I can just put comparators on each of these. So that when this gets a signal, it pulses the dropper and the hopper, which brings an item up, holds it there, and then turns that off for a little bit. Pretty straightforward. So now that we've got, so this is basically what's in the center almost complete. We just need to do some signal towers up. So for that, I need to do the droppers above each of these observers facing up. So that's 1, 2, and sideways, 1, 2, and sideways. Miss that one a little bit. 1, 2, and sideways, and then back over here. 1, 2, sideways, 1, 2, sideways. And now I can actually, so this clock is going to pulse that dropper, so we need to bring the signal a bit further up. So for that, I'm going to grab a note block, and it's going to be a note block and 2 observers. And we just do that all the way along. And over here, so that's our dropper, so note block, observer, note block. So you just press shift if you want to put a block next to something that would normally be a container and open up. There we go. So now when that clock pulses, it's going to run items along here, and that's running our dropper towers. So now we just need to do our hoppers. So for each of these, we're going to have an item feeding into the hopper below that, and then into here. So we'll just do that all the way along. I'm just holding shift as I click on the comparator to have the hopper face into the comparator. Do that over here as well. So it's just sort of easier to build this whole thing going from bottom to top. Now the next hoppers need to feed into these droppers, so I'm just going to do one there to remind myself that that's where it's coming in, but feeding into each of these, and then feeding into each of these. Now because we're going to take from this line of up and around, I'm just going to take these now and run it over, and then feeding into these droppers. And then again, we talked about how this is going to be our overflow line, so I'm just going to cheat a little bit with the chest, so we'll do put another chest there, but it just means that I know that I'm going to have a hopper facing this way, and this basically just makes it easier for me to have it feed into something. So I am going to put that there, and then I can put a hopper there, and that just gives me something to feed into. So basically these would normally feed into droppers, but because this is the overflow line, I just need a way of getting the items over to there. Now that I've done the bottom feed hoppers, I'm just going to get some compost bins, and we just do this to help with the lag a little bit. So any hopper that we're not going to put items on front of, top of, just gets a hopper, it just gets a compost bin. So again, for these ones, they're compost bin, compost bin. Okay, more hoppers. So we're just going to also face hoppers into these slabs. This is because they're just acting as locks. So into the slab, into the slab. Now the next hoppers need to sort of face outwards, so we're going to need some temporary blocks. So I'm just going to do that quickly. And this just gives me something to put these facing into. And we'll just do that again over here. Then we have outward facing hoppers. We're just going to now switch over to slabs, and the reason we're switching over to slabs is we now need to monitor what's happening with these droppers. So I'm just going to, I've got a slab already, there it is. So 1, 2, and then below it 1, 2. So they just alternate. You can do that on the other way side as well. Okay, and then we can just put dust on the inward lower sides. Just going to get myself some other redstone components. Now because this is the large item one, this is going to be on 1 tick, but the rest of these are going to be on 2 ticks, and as you can see it changes the direction of that dust, which we want. And then we're going to have some comparators. So these are watching when items come to the top droppers, and we're just going to put these front ones in subtract mode. So there, there, and there, facing where the repeater is in subtract mode. Now in order to have these give us a signal, I am going to put solid blocks behind each of these repeaters. I'm just holding shift to be able to click behind the repeater. Do that here and here. Then I'm going to get myself some furnaces, and it's just because I want an item I can put a signal into that can still have an item in it. So there and there, still holding shift, and there. Doesn't really matter which way the furnaces face. I just need them both in front of and behind these comparators. Now I can put an item in each of these, just so that they generate a signal. Don't really need to do it for the last one, but it's just easier to keep track of if you just do that for all of them. And now we can put some dust on, and you'll see that this dust is already on because of the comparator and the item. Now we don't need to put a dust here because this is the large item one, so we'll just put it next to it. But these ones, we're just going to hold shift to put dust on top. So this is the circuit for managing when we're going to activate and deactivate all of the hoppers to manage how the items come through. Now we just need to put our filter hoppers in, so our filter hoppers face into it. But we're not going to have one here because that's the large item one, so it doesn't need any filters, it's just filtering out large items. Here and here. And then we get our repeaters and we just put it on top of these hoppers that we just placed down. And then we can put some dust. So we have built all of the redstone to manage items coming through the sorting system, but now we need to get items into the sorting system. So for that, we are going to have a dropper tower right behind this chest here. So to do that, I'm just going to have a dropper there. And then I am going to come down here and have a hopper go into there. So this is just so that we take the items out of here at double speed and fill that dropper immediately. And just give myself some light room to work back here. So we're just going to build a little bit of a dropper tower. We just need to sort of get it up. Basically, so I can get it to this hopper line. So I'm just going to go grab myself some compost bins and I'm just putting them on top of these hoppers here, just simply for lag. But this is where we want to get the drop items and we'll put them in there. It's going to work at hopper speed, so I'm not going to overflow it, but it doesn't really matter if it does because this will also manage running at hopper speed. So now we just need to run a signal up that dropper tower. So we're just going to start by a comparator there. Block, block, target block, dust, dust, and a repeater. And then I'm going to grab myself a note block. And then we're just going to do a classic little observer note block tower. So observer up, note block, observer, note block, observer, note block. Now we probably don't need to come that far, we just need to do our signals. So that's already getting pulsed, so I just need to put a observer there and then every second one. And just to stop this last note block making noise, I'm just going to put an item above it. So I'm just going to break this to demonstrate how it works. If I put a whole bunch of items in here, that'll pulse that, and I'm just going to put that on subtract mode just to make sure that it doesn't really matter, but it just helps if this ever gets full, you want that on subtract mode. What that'll slowly do is silently take all the items up here at hopper speed. It's always nice to give these things a little bit of a test, and then we can put that hopper back in. So that's our tower to get the items into the system. So now that we've set our redstone up to move the items up and move it through the system, we need to configure our hoppers to define, what item goes into which slice. So for our large items, we're just going to start with having 20 items in here. And this is so that anything that's a bucket or an egg or anything that stacks to 16 or doesn't stack at all will basically increase this from 1 to more than 1, which will trigger that. And then for the rest of these, just make sure that the redstone on each of these hoppers is on before you do this, by the way. We're going to put in 21 items. So I'm just going to go through and do that for all of these. And this just prepares the hoppers to be, primed with enough items so that they can tell the difference when 1 extra item comes in or 2 extra items come in. Oh, that was probably a bad way of doing that. So 21 in each of these, and 20 in that one there. And then we just have to do the items we're sorting for. So I've got some clay, so I'm just going to put various clays in this first one. I'm going to do the same for this second one. Now you don't have to do just 2 different item types, you can do as many different item types as you want. Over here, just because I'm running out of terracotta, I'm just going to have these fill the line. And then these last ones are going to be our miscellaneous items. Okay, we're nearly ready to do a test. We've built our tower, we've built our sorting things. We're just going to do one final check to make sure everything's built correctly. So we're just going to make sure that these are all in subtract mode, that these comparators, these repeaters are on, that the top repeaters are on 1 tick, that the large item is on 1 tick and the other ones are on 2 ticks on the second level, that we have comparators on the bottom level and the comparators are all on, meaning there's items in the dropper, and our clocks are complete. So we have note blocks here and here, clocks are complete. Now there is one mistake that I made just here, and I do apologize for it. This needs to be a transparent block. And the reason it needs to be a transparent block is we can't accidentally power it, because if we power a solid block here, it'll act as if there was a dropper here. It'll stop that dropper from firing where we want it to. So they needed to be a transparent block. Sorry, I built it wrong when I was building it earlier. And that's just the one that's under the large item ones. Oh, okay, so we've just finished doing our final checks and fixed the transparent block and some of the note blocks. We're now going to test sorting. I've got some items in here. Some of them match the filters we have up here. Some of them are for the overflow and some of them are not stacking it to 64 and need to be filtered out in that first column. So I'm just going to put all of the items in this chest. They're taken out at, well, they'll be put into here faster than this can get rid of it, but that's okay. This sort of clock will work. That's why that's on subtract mode, so that even if that gets filled, the clock keeps going. We do get some ticking. Let's see, we've got some of our non-stackables coming through already. There's some of our filter items already coming through, and we might have some of our overflows. There they are now. So we shouldn't have had 2 items in here. As we can see, this is already empty, so it should already be filtering through now. Just wait for those last few ticks. That should be the last item. So as we can see, all the ones we didn't filter for in this column here, everything that doesn't stack to 64 is here, and then these match the filters we did. So that's our green item, and as we can see over here, it's green. Our second column comes from this side, and that's those colors there. And if we have a look here, that those colors, and then we've got yellow and the blue and purple. So the blue and purple, and the yellow. So sorry for some of the mistakes I made in there. Again, I do want to highlight that that does need to be a transparent block. Dust, dust. And you do need these 2 blocks above it to stop the redstone connecting through. So there you have it, block by block tutorial on how to build an encoded multi-item sorter. Thank you for watching.